In this video, we'll use our retiming rig to create some stunning, smooth retiming curves. Let's get started. So here we are in our last saved scene, and we've got our caches playing here, our water splash, our base particles, and here is our hero splash, all ready to go. And remember, we set up all of our xpCache system and our caches and spline curves so we can retime this. So let's just do a bit of housekeeping and then we will save this file out. So let's just save it in a new folder first, in our project folder, so we're organized from the get-go. So we'll go to File, Save Project As. Let's go to our water spin parent folder. We'll make a new one. So this is part 5 now. And we can call this retime, retime adjust, for want of a better name. We'll just copy that name. Let's go in there and we'll hit Control V to name the file that. Let's give it a version as well, version 1. There we go. Right, ready to go. So let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, look in our viewport. We have got our emitter foam particle hoods visible. To have a look at those, look, if we go into our water null and into our hero null, we go into the emitter foam for the water, go to display, hood, and look, we've got our hood active. So let's just get rid of that. And then we're also looking at the hood because we copied this foam emitter in our hero splash. Let's go to that one. Let's go to display, hood, and just get rid of that hood. We don't need to be counting those particles anymore because everything's cached. All right, very good. So if you remember, we have our base spheres set up with a user data set up with keyframes. We have our water particles set up again with user data with these keyframes, and we also have hero set up with user data and these keyframes. And the reason we've got this is we've linked this up with xpCache, so when we go to our timeline, we're able to, let's just make that a little bit smaller. Let's reduce that down a bit. So we're able, now we have a curve for each of these cache playbacks, which means that we can do kind of speed up, speed down, freeze frame, and all kinds of cool things. But what we want to do, we want this timeline to be as simple as possible. The rule is when you're doing anything with keyframes is you want as few as possible. And at the moment, we can actually tidy this up so we have fewer keyframes and fewer splines to have to worry about. And that is because our base spheres, which are our green spheres, we want to be able to adjust the speed of their animation separately from the water and the hero splash. But the water and the hero splash, we always want these to be linked so they're animating in exactly the same way. Otherwise, it's going to look like they're slipping and they're not part of the same fluid simulation. So what we could do is this. We don't need water and hero to have their own separate user data and separate rigs. We can share. So let me demonstrate how we're going to do that. What we're going to do in our hero splash with our user data, I'm going to go to user data, manage user data. And here we have, look, remember we set up our retime cache. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that by just hitting delete. Get rid of it, press OK. And now our hero null has no user data, which means that the xpCache rig's not going to be working properly. But that is because we are going to just use the keyframes from this one on the hero. And this is how we do it. Let's just go into that xpCache tag, double click. Okay, so we need to get rid of this null because we've removed, look, now we've removed that user data. Look, it's not possible as an output because we deleted it. It doesn't exist anymore. So we can't use that. But what we can do is we can just borrow the user data from this null. So let's drag that in. We've got user data still because we didn't delete that one. Retime cache. Pop that into there. There we go. And let's just take that off. And let's play it through. And now, so we've got this hooked up, it's working, but the retime of our hero particles are using the same keyframes as the retiming of our water particles, which means that when we come to our timeline, we only have 2 splines to worry about. Our water, which will control both the water and the hero splash, and our base spheres, which we want to animate slightly differently. So that is going to work really well for us, and it tidies things up, and it's fewer things to have to worry about. Excellent. So now we've got that sorted, we can start looking at how we are going to retime both the base spheres keyframes and the water keyframes to get this to look how we want it. So what we'll do is we want to retime this but get some decent playback. So we're going to forget about our base spheres to start with, and we're going to retime everything just using our water simulation to start. So let's switch off our hero. We've switched off our base. So now we've just got our water particles, which is fine. And in fact, let's switch off the foam, so we no longer have those. So this will just give us a nice idea about the movement in the viewport. So what I'm also going to do at this stage is we're going to go down to this menu here, click it, and remove all frames. What this is going to do, it's going to ensure that the playhead is always playing at the project frames per second in real time. And if it needs to skip some frames to do that, it will. But this gives us a proper idea about the animation speed of this scene. So that's good. So what we need to work out is what we need to do. We want this to be to come out, slow down, speed up, and then slow down again. So it's kind of a bit of a ramped process. So let's just bring our hero water particles in as well, but leave the both foam for now, because they're just kind of flourishes. So here we go. Here's our animation. So we want it to come out, then go into slow motion, speed up again, and then go into slow motion and come to a stop. So how are we going to control that? Well, let's go to our window timeline F curve, and let's just put this somewhere like that. And then what we could do, look, let's come out of this camera, and let's just reposition this. It's a similar angle to that camera. Just take those lines off the viewport. Similar angle to the camera, but let's just have it in the side here. So now we've got a nice big timeline, and we can see our animation happening. Okay. So what we want is we need to add some additional keyframes to this spline, which will give us those different stages of being fast, slow, fast, slow. So we want normal or slightly faster speed to start with. So let's go, if we hit Control, I can then click and it adds a keyframe here on my retimed cache for my water. So I've got a keyframe there. Then we want this to be slow motion till about here. So let's hit another keyframe. Then we want it to kind of whiz forward. So we need another keyframe, and then it'll gradually come to a stop. There we go. All right. So now we have these keyframes. Now, we haven't moved the position of these keyframes, so the animation is still running through exactly as it was. Okay? But now, look, if we select all of these ones, in fact, look, let's not do that. Let's select all of these. And if we move these down, this is going to mean that this section is now moving in slow motion. So let's have a look. There's a slow motion, and then it speeds up again. So that's kind of working. Let's move this further along. Something like that. And then you can see it speeding up again. So that's working pretty well. And at this point, we need it to really ramp up and be quite fast. So what we could do now is if we, oh, by the way, if you need to know how to navigate around the timeline, it's the same 1, 2, 3 shortcut keys that you use in this viewport. So if I hold 1 and pan my mouse around, it does that. If I hold 2 and move the mouse to the right, it zooms in horizontally, and if I move it up, it zooms in vertically. So it's really quite intuitive once you get used to it. So what we want to do is select now our last 2 keyframes, and if we move these to the left, we're ramping up this speed value. So let's have a look at that. What have we got? So here it plays in slow motion, fast, and then it just carries on playing. So what we really want is we want it to stop at about here, really. So how are we going to do that? Let's bring this down, and let's bring deselect, just like this last one. Let's bring this down somewhere like that. All right, let's have a look. Fast, slow. All right, good. I'm just going to bring that out slightly. Excellent. Let's take all of these and let's make this beginning bit happen a little bit more quickly. All right, very good. So what we need to do is accentuate this fast bit a little bit. So we can do that by just selecting this one. Let's move that up. Let's have a look. That's nice. And yeah, we want it to stop. Maybe something like that. And then it's coming slow here. All right, so these are linear changes. We have no speed ramping up and down here, but you can see how, look, this is playing kind of normal speed. This is then slowing down. This is then ramping up really quickly, and then this is slowing down, and then it's ending on this frame. So now we have got that kind of basic shape. We can then add some curves into this. So all we need to do is, let's hit Control A to select all those keyframes. Let's deselect this weighted tangent. Let's just take that off. Let's take off the lock tangent length, so we have no presets on our splines, and now we can just hit this, which will put our Bezier handles on. So now we have curved lines, and the difference is going to be quite marked. So let's just press play. So we have ramping in and out. We have one bit where it even started playing backwards. Here, look. And that's because this line has started moving down before it moves up again. All right. So obviously we don't want this. We don't want this to ramp up slowly on our initial keyframe. So let's just select this one and we can move that up. We just want that to be kind of like full speed, really. So something more like that. Then it goes to slow motion. No, we don't want this to come up and then down. So let's select this keyframe. I'm going to hold Shift, which will allow me just to move this one. We want it to be something like that. Let's have a look. And that, again, that's still. So let's select this one and let's hold Shift and move this in. So this is more of a constant line, but we've still got a bit of a curve. That's better. Lovely. And then ramping up to be quick. And then let's take this one. In fact, this one, look, you see we've got this weird kink here. Let's just zoom in a bit to that. Got a bit of a kink in this line, and that's because this Bezier handle is too long. So let's just bring that back, and you'll see it'll flatten that curve. Now this is coming up, and which means it's going to start going backwards, which we don't want. So let's highlight this one, hold shift, bring this handle back down a bit. Then it's easing to a stop. So that looks really nice. And so with this retiming, it takes a little bit of practice to get used to how you make little micro adjustments to each point and each handle to get the look that you require. And you might get to a point where you've kind of messed up and it's not working as you want. And you can always just start again if you want to start again, all you need to do, look, is highlight these keyframes, hit delete, and they've disappeared. And you can just start adding new keyframes. I'll just undo that to get those back. So yeah, if you haven't done this before, you will kind of be starting again a few times, getting used to it, maybe doing a few practice run-throughs, but you will get it in the end. So at this point, that's looking quite nice. And I'm not going to labor over this just now, because what we're going to do is we're going to do some hardware renders to play this back just to get an idea of exactly how this is feeling. So that's good. So we've got our water and our foam, but if we go to if we switch back on our base particles, these haven't been retimed. Look, you can see there's still just this linear keyframe line. So they haven't been retimed, and we want these to be retimed at the same rate as these. And there's a really quick way of doing this, which is really neat. Look, all we need to do, I'll keep the timeline up so you can see it happening. All we need to do is, now you must remember to go to your Espresso tag and deactivate it momentarily while we do this. So we'll deactivate that so it's no longer active. And then we're going to go to my water null. And this is, the water null is what's holding all of these keyframes and all of these splines. So what we're going to do is go to our retimed cache in our water null, which we've adjusted correctly, right click, animation, and we're going to copy track. Copy it. And then all we're going to need to do is go into the base spheres, go into the user data, and right click, animation, paste track. And look, it's pasted it in. Fantastic. So now we just need to go back to the Espresso rig, re-enable it, and now both tracks are exactly the same. Fantastic. And then if we play this back, you'll see that both are retimed at exactly the same rate. And that's looking really neat, isn't it? Excellent. Vroom. And then it pauses. So that's looking really nice. But again, we don't really know. Let's go back into our scene camera. So I'm pretty pleased with that. It looks okay at the moment, but you never really know the proper feel of these animations until you've done a render. And the quickest way of doing a render is to do what is called a hardware render. So that is what we'll set up now. So what we're going to do, a hardware render basically renders this viewport as it looks. So it'll render this axis handle, it'll render this grid on the floor, it'll render the emitter, and it'll render all of the particles and whatnot. So we don't really want our hardware render to be cluttered out with this this kind of viewport furniture. So let's tidy this up. We'll go to our emitter base spheres. Let's go to the display tag and let's deselect draw emitter. And you'll see that this blue emitter will disappear. Let's have a look. Actually, no, it's a smaller one, isn't it? It's the little green emitter, which is behind the blue. So let's just take that off, and that has disappeared. Let's do the same with our water, our foam and water emitters. Let's go to display, draw emitter, switch that off. You see it's disappeared. And then let's do the same with our hero, foam and water emitters. Let's go to display, particles, draw emitter, switch that off, and now that's disappeared. Excellent. We could reactivate our foam emitter because we could render these foam particles now. So let's do that on the water as well. All right. And look, so we want to get rid of this grid and this axis here. So let's go to filter and we'll take the grid off and we will take the world axis off. And this line is the horizon line, this white line here. So let's take that horizon off. And the rest, I mean, the rest is fine. That'll do. And let's just, when we play this through, It would be nice if this was a darker background. So to do that, let's just bring in a Cinema 4D Sky object, and we'll go to the Basic tab. Let's go to the Display Color On and change this from white to black. Click off it to get rid of the axis. So now look, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? There we go. So let's get this render set up now then. So we'll go to our render settings and we will deselect save. We don't need to save this. It'll just render to picture viewer. So let's go to the output. We want to frame range. We want to render all frames, and we can keep everything else default. Good. And then let's go to the renderer and change it from standard to hardware OpenGL. Let's go to those settings here. And we want to see our ambient occlusion that we had set up in the viewport. So to do that, you have to select the enhanced OpenGL options. And I'm just going to put ambient occlusion on. Perfect. Not going to bother with anti-aliasing or anything. This will just spit out a really fast render. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So let's just hit render to picture viewer. Yes, continue without saving, that's fine. And you'll see that, look, this is spitting out really, really fast. And once it's in, we'll be able to play this, and it's going to give us a really nice idea of how this retiming is working. So here we go, and here comes our splash particles coming to a stop. And as soon as the animations come to a stop, we can press stop on it. We don't need to do all 300 frames. So that's coming to a halt now. There we go, and that stopped. So let's go File, Stop Rendering. Yeah. So if we hit this button now, it's just going to load it into cache. This is a bit quick. This isn't real time yet. And this next playthrough will be real time. So here we go. So that's looking pretty nice. If you imagine what the scene is going to do is we're going to reveal our base particles, and we are going to make some adjustments to this because we're going to retime the very beginning of our fluid particles, the blue and white ones, so they don't appear at the same time. We're just going to have the green ones appear. Then perhaps at about this point, then the water particles are going to come in at a slightly faster until they catch up. Then they will go at the same speed. Then we've got our nice freeze frame section. Then it whizzes round to this. This slows down. And at this point, this is when the explosion is going to happen. And obviously we've not set any of that up yet, which is why we've frozen it at this point. So that's looking pretty nice. Let's just run it through a few times to get a nice feel for it. So here they come in, slow down, vroom. So I'm just thinking when this section, it could perhaps slow down a bit more abruptly. Let's just play that again. It kind of ramps down a bit too quickly. I think it could be fast and then vroom, and then fast and then vroom. But other than that, the basic timing is looking good. Right, so let's just come out of there. Let's go back to our F-curve, and let's just switch off the foam for now, and we'll switch off the water, the base spheres. Right, so the water cache, here's our spline. So we want this to go into our slowdown a little bit more quickly. And so to do that, let's highlight that keyframe, hold shift, and we just want to move that in and curve it down so it goes into that slower amount more quickly. Something like that. Let's have a look at how that looks. Let's come out of that camera. Where are we? Let's move this scene camera across a bit. All right. So here we go. Yeah, that's good. Yes, you see it's kind of a bit more abrupt going into that. It's still got a bit of a curve, but it's a bit more abrupt as it goes into the slow motion. And then whoosh. And again, I think this could be more abrupt. So let's hold shift and bring that down a bit. Yeah. And let's take this one, hold shift, make it a bit more abrupt. And I think, let's take these two, just move them across a bit. All right, let's have a play through. And so you're just continually playing and tweaking until you get a feel for it. And I mean, if you're doing this, obviously it will change on your project. If you're cutting this to a music track, the decisions that you make are going to be very different. We're not. We've got the luxury of just making it look as cool as we like. So there we go, slow motion bit. So let's just make that slightly, I think that's a little bit too quick now. Okay, that's coming in fast, whoosh, and then slows down. Whoosh. Yeah, I think that's looking really nice. I'm pleased with that for now, so we'll try another hardware render. But remember, what we need to do is we've only adjusted one of our curves here, the water retime. And so to get this to match up correctly with our base spheres, we need to adjust the curve of these because they're not in time anymore. Look, we've changed it and they're slightly out. So the way we do that again is we switch off our base spheres espresso tag. We go to our water null. We go to our user data tab. We right click animation, copy track. We go to our base spheres null, user data, right click animation, paste track, paste it in, go to our espresso, switch it back on, and now we should be, let's go into that production camera, now we should be up and running again at the same speed. Yeah. Let's just double check in the timeline that that's worked. So we'll go to window, timeline, and yeah, look, exactly the same curve in each. So we know that we are in business. Fantastic. So let's go to our water, switch the phone back on. Let's go to our hero, switch the phone back on and get that cache on. There we go. Right, so we're ready to do another hardware render. Let's hit render to picture viewer. Yeah. So this is going to be obviously a slightly different animation. But hopefully those changes that we've made are going to make it slightly more pleasing. And we've got this sudden ramp in, whoosh. And then it comes to a stop. And then when it slows down to a stop, we then will cut to the explode. And that's obviously the next section. Looking good. So let's just leave this going until it stopped animating. There we go. Let's hit file, stop. Okay. Put that into cache. This one will be a bit quick. This isn't real time. This is a bit quick. And right, here we go. That's really nice. Very pleased with that. Splash, explode. One more time. That looks great. Okay, happy with that. So let's come out of the picture viewer. So that's looking really nice. We've got that sorted. So the final step that we're going to do here is we are going to slightly offset this beginning animation. So our base spheres come out first and our water comes out second. So how are we going to do that? Well, it's dead easy actually. Let's go back to our timeline F curve and we're going to display just our water. So this is just our water. We'll come out on that production camera so it's there. So both of these splines are the same. Let's just get our water highlighted and we're going to highlight this first frame. And all we're going to do to get this to work, let's just zoom out a bit, move this up. We're going to get just the water one. And if we just pull this down a bit, this is just going to offset the start. Now look what happened. So here's the base spheres and here's the water. And if we put them both on, you can see they're slightly different until they get to this point, and then their animation is identical. So let's just have a look. If we go through this, brilliant. So look, the base spheres come on first, vroom, and then the water catch it, and they catch up with each other at this first keyframe when they then start going slow. So that works really nicely. Whoosh. Okay. And if you think that that water's a little bit fast, you can just take, let's go back to just the water, take this keyframe, just lift it up a bit, and then it won't come on in quite as delayed a way. No, I think I preferred it a little bit later. Whoosh. Yes, that's looking great. And it catches up by the time it then slows down into slow motion. So that's really cool. Love it. Let's just show both curves. So there we go. We've got them catching up with each other here. Very nice. Excellent. So that's looking really cool. Let's do one more hardware render so we get a proper idea of what that looks like. So here we go. Again, it's going to spit up, but you can see, look, we get our base particles coming in first into our nice slow motion, whiz forward to our hero splash. Here it comes. Slowing down. There we go. And then stop. So you can see from this, with this type of rig, with relatively simple adjustments, we can drastically change this retiming, and it remains that kind of editable way. Even though we've got cached particle data, you can change the look of this however you might wish, and if you need to make tweaks because the client doesn't like it, it's very, very simple. So here we go. Here is our newly offset animation. Looking good. So base spheres come in, water splash afterwards. Zoom. Cool. Let's look at it one more time. Really like it. Excellent. I think arguably, possibly we could have the water coming in slightly later. Let's just have a look at that. So come out of that camera. Let's go back to a timeline F curve. So if we had the water coming in slightly later, we could, let's just do the, make sure we've just got the water highlighted. What I'm doing, I'm just going to hold shift, bring this down ever so slightly, and then take this keyframe, move it down so it's coming in later. There we are. Let's try that. How does that look? Yeah. That's better. That is better. Excellent. Right. Promise this will be the last hardware render. But the beauty of doing these hardware renders, you can see just how fast. I mean, it's almost rendering in real time, really. So you can get it done super quick, play it through in real time, and get a proper idea of this animation speed. So it's a really good workflow and very efficient. So here we go, coming to the end. And then as soon as it's finished animating, we'll hit stop. There we go, and stopped. There it is. Right, file, stop. Okay. Awesome. Hit play. And there we go. I think we'll call that one done. Looking great. So in this series, we've learned how to simulate dynamic particles and art direct their movement using splines and the flow field. We've then made a fluid effect splash using the sheeter and the XP foam object to make that more detailed. We've cached that out, and then we've learned this really nice retiming cache technique to get smooth curved speed ramps. So we'll call this one done. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.